one.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Lopez-Pierre, and I serve as the president and CEO of the Black Real Estate Forum, a national organization of Black real estate investors committed to building wealth and creating jobs for Black people. In addition, I serve as the fund manager for BREF Fund Number 1, a private social impact real estate fund, a related corporation of Black Real Estate Forum, LLC. BREF Fund Number 1 LLC is in the process of raising $25 million in equity via a Securities and Exchange Reg D exemption from accredited Black investors to invest with Black real estate developers and fix and flippers in Black communities across America, including Puerto Rico and the United States Virgin Islands. Tonight, as a part of our campaign for Black wealth in America, a national call to action for Black professionals, hosted by the Black Real Estate Forum, I will be moderating a Zoom conversation with a knowledgeable group of Black professionals to discuss some of the do's and don'ts for Black people working together to build wealth for their families and communities. Topics will include earned income, paycheck versus passive income, investments such as commercial real estate, stocks, and bonds, financial planning, insurance, business key man person, and liability insurance. Marriage, family, and divorce. I can tell you from personal experience, divorce is a great way to lose one's wealth. Death and taxes, estate planning, trust and wills, and health disparities. Only 1.9% of Black households had a net worth of over $1 million in 2016, per the Institute for Policy Studies. African-American households are making middle income money, but have the wealth of a white high school dropout, said Dedrick Asante-Muhammad, a senior fellow at Prosperity Now. Before we start the conversation, let's take a moment to deal with some legal housekeeping, i.e. disclaimers, and set the table by giving some historic context for why Black people find themselves at the bottom of the economic ladder in America. So I'm just going to read this part really quick. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of the Black Real Estate Forum. The material and the information presented here is for general information purposes only. The Black Real Estate Forum's name and all forms and abbreviations are the property of its own, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or services. Okay, now let's give some historic context. Data from the United States Federal Reserve indicates that as of 221, the top 1% of households in the United States held 32% of the country's wealth, while the bottom 50% held 2.6%. In 2021, the Samuel Du Bois Cook Center for Social Equity at Duke University recently released a report on Black wealth in America entitled "Still Running Up the Down Escalator: How Narratives Shape Our Understanding of Racial Wealth Inequality." And I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs from that report. The report is in the chat, so I encourage you to read the whole report, and the link is in there where you can find it. The typical Black household's wealth was $24,000. For the white household, it was $188,000. This translates into the typical Black household holding about 12 cents for every dollar of wealth held by the typical white family. Racial wealth inequality remains a persistent defining American issue, particularly in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic's disproportionate toll on physical and financial health of Black people. Racial wealth inequality didn't happen by accident. It was designed by centuries of government policies throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. Politicians and government officials provided wealth starter kits, and that's in quotes, that included land, government-backed mortgages, and farm loans, a social safety net, and businesses and education subsidies to white families while intentionally excluding Black families. These wealth drivers of yesteryear continue to shape wealth ownership today. For example, many white Americans can trace their legacy of wealth and property ownership to a single government program, the Homestead Act of 1862. It experienced and redistributed land from 42 Native American tribes to white homesteaders. Between 1868 and 1934, the government granted 270 million acres of Western land, an area the size of California and Texas combined, to 1.5 million white families. Wealth building for Black Americans started with close to zero capital. After the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1863, they owned 0.5% of the nation's total wealth, and that figure has barely moved. Today, Black Americans own 1 to 2% of the nation's wealth, while at least 45 million living white Americans continue to benefit from the Homestead Act land patents. Politicians and government officials often colluded to impede people from building Black people from building generational wealth. For example, under the New Deal in the 1930s, Black laborers were blocked from an estimated 143 billion and $216 in unemployment benefits. Anti-Black racism in housing policies and practices like redlining created a structure in which Black families and as neighbors were considered to be less favorable, and the neighborhoods they lived in were devalued. Between 1934 and 1963, the federal government backed $120 billion of home loans, and more than 98% of those funds went to white households. In addition to enacting policies that blocked Black wealth building, the federal government turned a blind eye to upward of 100 white riots and massacres that took place between the end of the Civil War and World War II. These horrific assaults not only resulted in the mass murders of Black people, but also led to the destruction and or appropriation of their property, businesses, lands, and communities by white terrorists. These and many other policies and practices enacted, reinforced, and in tandem by the public and private sector worked together in a powerful dance, creating a structured systems that intentionally extracted little wealth Black families owned, while also blocking the transfer of wealth to future generations. The COVID-19 pandemic and the corresponding economic crisis have only exacerbated the problem for the Black community. The Samuel D. Cook Center for Social Equity at Duke University did a great job at getting to the heart of the problem. I encourage you to read the report in full and check the chat box for the link for this program. All right, tonight let's talk about what Black professionals can do to help build wealth in their families and in the Black community. After listening to that, you would think there's not much that we can do, but as individuals, we can control our own destinies, at least for us and our families and the communities we live in. And tonight, I am joined by a distinguished group of panelists. Why don't we start with 15-second introductions. Mark, why don't you go first?
Good evening. My name is E. Mark Lewis. I've been in the industry, the financial service industry, for over 35 years. I am a provider of financial products with a company that's going to remain unnamed. And I have some strategies that I think have helped many Black professionals accumulate wealth. I'm a graduate of St. John's. I have a degree in risk management, and I'm pleased to be here.
Great. And let's go to Beatrice, please.
Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Beatrice Cazeau. I am a practicing attorney in the state of Florida. I have been practicing law for approximately 23 years in the areas of family law and personal injury. And I'm also a code enforcement special magistrate for different cities in the state of Florida. And I am also an investor. So I am looking forward to a great conversation, and hopefully we can all learn something tonight.
Great. And Michael?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Chijioke. I have a background in public health and also law. I'm looking forward to sharing information on the connection between health and wealth. It's good seeing everyone today.
Very good. And I'm really glad you could join us, Michael, because I think this pandemic has really highlighted, it's not just how much money you have, it's how long you get to live to enjoy it. And so having you on this panel, I think, is a coup for us. Thank you. joining us. And Matthew.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matthew Scott. I'm the former managing editor at Black Enterprise. I'm currently a columnist. I write a column on corporate governance, and I also write about business communications and diversity, equity, and inclusion for clients because I run my own content creation business. So I'll be sharing some information on creating income in the economy.
Very good, very good. So let's before we get to Mark, let me do me a favor, Matthew, just bring up, I want to do like 20 seconds. Could you just bring up the video of the property that we have in the Bronx? And this property, so our fund, we raise capital exclusively from Black investors, and we deploy that capital exclusively with Black real estate operating partners. And this is a property in the Bronx that we're going to be tearing down and developing 2 townhouses. And this is just an example of the type of investing that we'll be doing in the future. Our portfolio currently has 3 properties, one in Massachusetts, where we invested $100,000 with the operating partner in Massachusetts. We invested $100,000 with an operating partner in Brooklyn, Brownsville, Brooklyn. And all 3 of these properties, you can find the videos on our website and at blackrealestateforum.com, blackrealestateforum.com. And so this is, just let it play, no volume. This is a property, a single 1 family that was acquired for $340,000. It's now valued at $640,000. There's a $315,000 mortgage on the property, and there's about $100,000 in arrears. The former owner couldn't develop the property, and so we took it off his hands, and we're going to raise the investment capital to buy out the bank. We're going to take out the bank. We're going to pay off that complete mortgage, so the property is 100% owned by Black people. And then we're going to use Black debt. We're going to raise Black debt, offer people mortgages at 10%, so that the property is being developed exclusively with Black money, Black equity, and Black debt. Speed it along so we can just see the inside, and then let's move on to, then we're going to start the conversation with Mark. I play, yeah, so yeah, play that. So, and this is in the Bronx. It's a working class, middle class neighborhood. So trust me, the homeowners on this block, they cannot wait. This property has been vacant like this for about 4 years. They cannot wait until we start demolition and construction. And so that's going to increase the property values for the other homeowners in the neighborhood. So Mark.
Yes.
You there? So
yes.
Let's start. You're a financial professional. When I was a real estate broker, I would get to look at the financial disclosure forms of people that wanted to buy brownstones in Harlem, New York. And a lot of times it wasn't a pretty picture. They should have gone and saw someone like you first before they came and saw me, in many cases. And in other cases, their financials were impeccable, and they credit that they have the financial knowledge because of the expertise of people like yourself. So give me a sense of, we have people on this panel that are lawyers and doctors, investment bankers, and other professionals. Many of them are not using financial service professionals. When you get a client, what's the stripped down lowdown that you use to move them forward?
Well, first of all, I'd like, hopefully, when you walk away from this session, my input, you get this message. Risk management is a practical way of life. risk management is a practical way of life. So let me just move back a little before I tell you my process.
Please.
When I engage folks, I try to help them to understand that having one stream of income is paramount to losing in the first quarter. And so when I think about someone's ability to earn, the first thing I usually think about is their human capital. Everyone works. Everyone's got a time frame when they're going to work, and that will define your human capital. So if you have 20 more years of work, and let's just use round numbers, and you make $100,000, you have a human capital of $2 million. And sometimes that may be your largest asset. That may be your largest asset. Because over the next 20 years, $2 million will pass through your hand. And so ultimately, what we want to do is try to protect that human capital. And there are ways, there are mechanisms to protect that human capital in an instant. I call it instant legacy. The next level of capital is social capital. Many of us went off to college, made friends, and some of us need to use that relationship to further their opportunities. Because the people you know will connect you to the people you need to know. So the people you know oftentimes lead to opportunities that wouldn't exist solely in your silos. So there is wealth right there. The friends, the acquaintances you know. The next is cultural capital. Now, when I say cultural capital, I'm talking about our Jewish brothers. Our Jewish brothers have a culture of doing work with one another, keeping the business among.
Preach.
Okay, I'm sorry. Doing business with one another. And so every aspect of that business goes to a Jewish member. I don't like him, but I'm still doing business with him. So that alone, that cultural aspect builds a sort of pool of money amongst all those people. And then the final one that most people know is financial capital. By saving, by investing, by deploying assets in the right areas, you are able to build wealth. Now, what I've noticed over the years, over the 30-odd years that I've been doing this, the individuals that tend to be successful, they have a service, they have a product that is in demand, and that product or service allows them to deploy and get real estate. Now, while Thomas is doing it a different way, he's going straight into real estate. Many that have professions and that have discretionary income find ways to deploy it in real estate. And that's where I see the most active use of this strategy to build wealth in real estate. So don't give up what you're doing. Whatever you're doing, whatever you found that your skill set is, do it, deploy it. And ensure that you can take that funds and go off and build that, oh, I heard the word land grab, so that you can get as much real estate under your belt, and then it goes to the next generation. A gentleman said to me once, when I started in this business almost 30 years ago, he was my mother's insurance agent, and he was Jewish. And he said, and no disrespect to anyone who may be of the Jewish faith, he said, the next time they kill us, it's contractual. And so what I say about that is that there are people that use financial instruments to create immediate legacies. Immediate legacies that you might not be able to create in a short time period. So everyone in the room right here, right now, with a pen and a paper, I create instant legacies. And hopefully you use that legacy to collateralize and further build on assets you want to create. I hope that has some meaning when I say this. I hope there are other questions that come.
Yeah, I want you, before we get to, because I think you summed it up perfectly in terms of risk management and, marriage and divorce. That's, managing that is important risk management to think about. But, we have professionals here who, I'll just say, I remember a situation where someone brought me a deal where the woman was a senior and she owned 2 brownstones in Brooklyn. And of course, we're not going to name the person, but that person had daughters that lacked the sophistication to be able to maintain generational wealth. And there were a number of grandchildren that this woman wanted to make sure that her daughters did not basically lose the family farm and leave the grandchildren nothing, because she understood how important generational wealth was. And in a situation like that, if you have someone who's like 70, 80 years old and they own property, as a professor, what recommendations do you make to them, and what should they do with those properties, and how should they be structured to protect the legacy of the family?
This is a team effort. This is a team effort, bringing in their CPA, bringing in the attorney, and bringing in someone like myself that can help to construct this. But there needs to be a discussion about how using trust to make the mechanism flow smoothly to the next generation. And because we don't know what may happen to a person in the latter years, I'm talking about 60 to 90. When somebody reaches 60 to 90, there's oftentimes impairment, there's disability. There is times where people lose their cognitive abilities. And when that happens, folks lose assets. So there needs to be a discussion in conjunction with an attorney about the strategy that could be useful for using trust so that the property will remain within the family and hopefully they can remain in place until they close their eyes. So there's an education process involved here. So this is not strong arming anyone. This is about.
So the property gets sold. It's put into a trust. The proceeds from the trust are reinvested, and then the grandchildren and thereafter the generational, they get to benefit from the distributions of the capital that was generated from the sale of that property for generations to come, as opposed to just leaving it to the 2 siblings and it just disappearing. I look at the example of the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts. Many people know of Anderson Cooper, and his mother was Gloria Vanderbilt. She was very famous for Jordache jeans, but the Vanderbilts have no money anymore. There's nothing to leave anymore. And she told her son, Anderson Cooper, you're gonna have to find your own way. There's no money. But the Rockefellers, and the reason there's no money is because the Vanderbilts, I think he had 2 or 3 sons, and he just divided the wealth and gave it to them, and then they got married and divorced and had children and so on, and divided until there's nothing left. But the Rockefellers never gave the money to their children. They put it in a trust, and then they said a percentage of that can be used to benefit the heirs for generations to come. And now I think there's about 400 Rockefellers at different age levels that are all enjoying the wealth from that situation. And someone like you and a lawyer and accountant is going to be critical. And so I see many times Black professionals are very successful, alive, but then their spouses suffer because, and their children suffer because they didn't make the right financial planning decisions. And they need to call someone like you. Matthew, do me a favor, put the links of our panelists on their LinkedIn profiles in the profiles so people can find them. And so, your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. This is a team sport. And when you are dealing with an elderly person that may have been able to acquire properties over 30, 40, 50 years, there is a reluctance to relinquish. So there's definitely a need to educate and slowly convince them this is the way that it goes. This is the best intention. This is what maximizes your property and leaves a legacy.
Right, but before you become that elderly person, and then you're a little concerned about your thinking, while you're right in your mind now, that's when the trust should be set up, because then you can have an honest conversation with your children and your heirs, and you're not 90 years old, with bad eyesight trying to figure out what direction to go in, because there are those in our community. They do not look like us. They are predators. And they come into our community and they love preying on Black families that are disorganized and not educated to the ways of business. And there are millions of stories of Black people losing property throughout this country because some shyster came and took their property and left them pennies on the dollar and destroyed the family legacy. So having a conversation with someone like you and the other members of the team is critical. Last thoughts?
Don't be afraid to engage. The whole process for me is, we are here. When I say we, the professionals are here to assist and to help. And ultimately, the intent here is we're on the same page. We want to see you get to your end goal.
Very good, very good, very good. Beatrice, my sister.
Present.
By the way, I have to tell you, that red jacket, it's perfect on camera, powerful.
Oh, really? Good. I should wear more often when we go to trial.
Yeah. I don't want to be on the other side of your table. Thank you for joining us this evening. Now, tell me your specialty, your law specialty, because I want to move from what Mark was saying and go right into risk management, because people don't realize marriage and divorce is the first business contract that many of us will make in our lives.
Well, basically at the office, we practice family law. We do divorce cases, child support, custody, and we do personal injury. So, and now I have an associate that's doing closing at the office. So that's mostly what we do. Real estate closings, family law, and personal injury.
Okay, so and I want to say this very politically correctly. I'm not don't want to offend anybody. So please forgive me if I fumble. Me and a number of associates, Matthew was with me. Friday, we were at the Black MBA, New York Black MBA Martin Luther King cocktail party. Great event. I think there must have been easy 500 people there. We were at the Bryant Hotel on 42nd and 6th Avenue. And we were sitting down, enjoying our drinks, and there must have been maybe 10 of us in a circle. There was a doctor, there was a lawyer, the usual list of suspects of professionals. And I think there was only like 3 guys and the rest were women. They were all single, never married, no children, and highly successful financially and professionally. And so what advice would you give? So wait, let me put this in context. So 29% of white people in America have a college degree. The difference in gender is 1%. So if you're a white woman, you have no problem finding, a white college educated man to marry, no problem. For black people, 23% of black people in America have a college degree, and the difference in gender is 65%, 35%, 65% favor women. And so unfortunately, the most capable women in our lives that should be getting married and having children, the raw material, meaning the black educated man, does not exist in large numbers. And so, but for those that do get married, what do you advise them as they enter these marriages? And 50% of marriages end divorce, and even more within the black community. What do you advise them on how to manage risk management of their wealth and assets?
I think for professionals, and if they weren't aware, one of the first things because now I think that people are getting married much later on in life. It's not so much that they're getting married, right after college. Most of them are well into their late 20s, early 30s, even if they're in their 40s. One of the things that people can do is to basically sign a prenup. If you are, well into your 30s and you've had a career, you've had investment properties, and you're probably an entrepreneur, you have a business, one of the ways to safeguard, what you own prior to marriage is to get a prenup. It's a conversation sometimes I think we're afraid to have with our potential partner. I think that there is somewhat of a negative connotation, to going to your fiance and say, okay, I had my attorney, prepare a prenup and I want you to review it, sign right here.
Wait a minute, so
each page on the left corner.
let me ask you this. Let's say before you even have that conversation, for some individuals, they're divorced with children, and they have assets,
right?
And they want to get married again. And what are your thoughts on that? Even they don't even have a girlfriend; they're not even going on dates, but they have these assets, this real estate, this business, this company, and wouldn't the responsible thing to be that they take before they partner up with another person? And I say person because it could be a woman partnering with a man or a man partnering with a woman. It's not always, the man is taking on a woman of lower social income. And many times in the Black community, let's be honest, it's a woman that's making all the money. And so isn't it wise for them to put a number of their assets in a trust for the benefit of their children and their heirs, so that if they get divorced, the second wife or the first wife, and the first wife being that in the sense that they weren't married the first time and they have children out of wedlock, wouldn't it be wiser to structure a situation where their assets are being reserved for their legacy, which is their children, and that doesn't even require a prenup? It's just that, hi honey, we're getting married next month, but you see all those properties, they're in a trust for my children, so I don't really own them. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think you've said it perfectly. I advise everyone to have a wills and trust, and to have a conversation with an estate or probate lawyer in the state where you live. I think that Mark said it well. He said it's a teamwork. as a family law attorney, I don't prepare wills, I don't prepare trust, but I always refer my clients to go sit down with a, CPA, a financial advisor, an estate planning lawyer, because they have a specialty or someone that they can advise them on. Definitely, I always tell people to get your affairs in order. Get your paperwork in order. It's very important that you do that. I think Mark talked about it where, if someone is in the hospital and they're not lucid, they're in a coma, it's too late. It's too late to bring someone there, a notary, and say, sign here on a dotted line. It can't happen. That's a conversation that needs to be had ahead of time before, you're in a hospital and you're half dead. You don't know what's being placed in front of you and asking you to sign. I think that someone who has children, who has assets, it's even more important that you have your documents in order, especially if you're thinking about getting remarried and creating a new family. You need to be able to protect your assets. You need to be able to provide for the children that you do have with your former wife. And yes, I think that more, even better than a will, is to have a trust, because wills have to go through probate. And when you go through probate, you have to notify all of your debtors, all your creditors, and they can come in and be a part of the probate action. You don't want that. If you create a trust, like you had stated, if you have a trust in place, then you know who your beneficiaries are, you know what the terms of the trust is, you know who gets what. So it is very important that you have that in place, because you don't know if something happens. It's really sad when you look at some of the stars that have passed away, and then you turn around and you realize the chaos that they left behind for their families, because these people died. They have millions of dollars, and yet they die without so much as a simple will. And you talking about, you just fumbled generational wealth, because that million, if you had about $20 million, once your case go through probate, you can almost cut this in half, right? So imagine losing millions and millions and millions of dollars because you weren't prepared. Right? None of us are really prepared for death. We know that, it's a right. We know we're all going to go through it. We will die one day. It may be tonight. It may be tomorrow. It may be another 20 years. But the fact of the matter is, we can only start preparing today. I am a mom. I have 2 children. And let me tell you, Mark talks about it. I believe in insurance. I have insurance. You understand? I am fully covered. It's kind of like a disdain almost for people who have children, and then they're not prepared, and then something happens, and then we have to do GoFundMe. GoFundMe is not a substitute for having your documents in place, for having a life insurance, especially if you have beneficiaries. And I think that's the reason why, as Black people, we're always, our kids, they always have to start from the back of the line, because you don't have somebody that had left them something. If you left your kids $25,000, man, you just give them a start. Instead of them starting at level 0, at least they're starting at 25,000. And if they're smart, they're going to make that 25,000 is going to turn into 50, 100 and 150. But when you leave nothing, and now they have to create a GoFundMe just to handle your funeral services, what are we doing? You understand? People, what are we doing?
What's interesting is that, so in the beginning of the panel, I discussed the macro reasons for why Black people don't have wealth, but there is a micro reason also, and personal responsibility. And if you look at the Black family and the white family, in the white family, when the baby is born, the grandmother opens up an account, a college fund, so that when that 18-year-old is ready to go to school, the grandma comes out of the woodwork and says, here's your colleges paid for, because I started saving when you were born and I kissed you in the hospital. And for us, our Black families, our success is very erratic. So you have one woman that becomes a lawyer. Then you have many times it's the son. He's, a security guard, and his children go to a low performing public school system. So the sister, who's the attorney, who understands the importance of education and is earning a significant income, and by the way, doesn't have a husband or children, is like, I'll pay for parochial school for the kids so that they have a chance. So that my two nephews have a chance, because these failed public schools, at least the ones I know about in New York City, they're just not doing it. And so now, instead of taking her earned income and putting it in asset building opportunities, she's paying for the parochial schools for her nephews. And so what ends up happening is that the Black professionals, many of them are doing a family welfare. That, so it's not that our people are irresponsible with their money. It's just that many times we're taking care of other families and members. We're taking care of our parents. Our parents loved us. Well, not my parents, but there are parents out there who love their kids. I never met my mother, and my father was a drug addict, and so was my mother. But anyway, there are parents that love their family, and they got them into college. They got them through the hood. And now, as a responsible son and daughter, you should be making sure that your parents are living their last years in comfort, because you would not have gotten where you are if you didn't have that good mother and good father. Well, in most cases, it's a good mother. It's a Black woman that usually gets the Black man through across the finish line. So I think because 73% of Black children are born outside of marriage. And so a lot of our families are broken. And so it's the strong Black woman that's getting these Black men and women to become the successful professionals they are. And these people deserve, in older age, they deserve, a break. But that still means that you have less money to invest in commercial real estate investment opportunities. And so, no, it's critical. Insurance and managing marriage and divorce. Here's something that's really critical. And I wonder if you see this with your clients. You have a couple getting divorced. Do you advise whoever your client is and they have children, do you advise that you force the husband to get a closed insurance policy of let's say $1 million, so that, for two reasons: if he gets hit by a truck and dies, you don't have to fight with the second wife and the second group of children, but there's $1 million for your child before he has any more kids. And in the divorce, he has to pay the premium and is locked, so it can't be changed in any way. Do you advise your clients to do that?
I always advise the client in every petition, not just my client, but also, you ask the court to order the other party, especially if the other party is the one that's is responsible to pay child support, right? That there is a clause there that he or she would get life insurance and, for the benefit of the minor child. But it's always a fight trying to get our folks to believe in life insurance, because they're afraid that, okay, if I have the life insurance, maybe she would try to get me killed for the life insurance, or if I die, then she's going to use my money with her next man. It's always, even with our parents.
But the way you educate them is
to get your parents to talk to your parents about, a wills or a trust. They're talking about, what? Do you know something that I don't? Am I dying? Maybe not today, but yes, it's going to happen. So get yourself a life insurance so that I don't have to get a GoFundMe, you understand, while you sit on ice, for 3 months, right? So it's really something. It requires education. I think it's cultural. I'm Haitian American, so I know that everything that I've said here is even worse on, dealing with my Haitian clients, because they don't believe in it. If you want to talk to them about creating a will, they're going to ask you, why? Do you know something? Am I dying? If you talk to your client talking about getting a life insurance for the benefit of your minor children, then you're thinking about, the woman is going to be using my money when I die, and maybe she's going to get me killed just so that she can get to the money quicker. So it's a whole education that you have to do with these clients. You know, it's not just, you know,
But what you tell them is that so you get the insurance policy, right? And then the insurance policy, instead of paying it out to the children, you pay it out to a trust. And then the trust shares it with the children. And then you take your brother, your sister, whoever you trust, and you make them the trustee of the trust. So your ex-spouse has no control or power over that money. So this is what, you know, I don't want to say white people, but this is what other educated groups in America do to protect the legacy, because your legacy is not your wealth. You know, your legacy is your children. You know, I'm very proud of my children. I have 3 kids, 12-year-old twin daughters. They just got their report cards. I each gave them $100 because they got A's in English, math, and science. And my son just scored a 780 in English on his SAT and a 720 on math. And he wants to be a securities lawyer. So we're waiting to see what undergrads are going to take him. And we're waiting, you know, crossing fingers. But anyway, your children is your legacy. And that's kind of like how you should look at it, because you're gonna die at some point. And you know, that's the one thing you're guaranteed is death and taxes. Yeah. And speaking of death and taxes, Michael, you there?
I'm here. That's a great transition, Thomas.
Yeah, you know, Michael, where'd you get your law degree from? You went to
went to Howard University.
You went to Howard University. Is that a good school? I don't know that school.
I went there, so it's a great school. What do you mean?
Oh, okay. It's in LA?
You know, it's in the area, Washington, D.C. area.
Oh, that Howard. Oh, you went to one of the top schools. And then you went and got an MPH in Masters in Public Health?
Correct. Okay.
And you're also an entrepreneur. Tell me about your entrepreneur business.
So, a number of things. One, on the consulting side. So I do business consulting where I help businesses put together their contracts, or help to, if they have, let's say they have workers or something like that, I help to put together the way that the worker can execute that specific project in a timely manner. Also on the land side as well, I do land flipping.
Mm-hmm.
So
and do you advise your clients? Let's say you have a client that's a medical doctor, and you know, not saying that doctors are not savvy in finance, but you know, they want to open a practice, and you look at the rent they're paying, and you're like, listen, with that rent, you should buy a building and move your practice in there and separate it to 2 LLCs. One LLC is the operating business, which is your medical practice, and then the other LLC, which is that's holding the ownership of the real estate with a mortgage, and you should use the rent that you're going to be paying to somebody else as a tenant, use that to underwrite the property. And then after 20 years of being a doctor, you're like, you have this outstanding asset. So those are the kind of conversations that you're engaged in?
Not at all, actually. But yeah, so for those types of situations, and excuse me if you hear the background, for those types of situations, I just reach out to, again, relationships, as Mark was mentioning, to put together a very strong plan with the accredited and experienced people. So it's really reaching out to my network when I have very specific clients so that I can give them a package deal that is valuable to them.
Very good. So I want to pause for a minute because I disagree with you. That is not noise in the background. Everybody, Michael has a 2-year-old son or a 1-year-old son?
I wish I could say he was 1. You know, he's approaching 1. He's approaching
1. And him and his wife, who's a very successful professional, he is a partner in their marriage, and he assumes major childcare responsibilities in raising his son. He's the future Black man in the sense that he plays an active role in raising his child. And I have 2 daughters, and I hope my daughters marry a man like you, who will be playing an active role in the raising of their children. So that is not noise in the background. That is you taking a break to participate on this panel, but your number one asset and your legacy is your family. And here.
Thomas makes you look so good. So I appreciate you, Thomas.
Now, death and taxes. So, I had a conversation with someone where, we talked about the Social Security system, where Black people are basically funding it, but they're dying at significantly younger age. There's it's a joke. Well, actually, it's not a joke. It's a sad reality that Black people under 35, they die from homicide, which is mostly them killing each other. Not police. The police are not the number one killers of young Black men. The number one killers of young Black men by a multiple of 100 is other young Black men. And then for white men under 35, their cause of death is accidents and paper cuts. So biking accidents, skiing accident, car accidents, skateboard accidents. And then for Black men over 35, the one cause of death is hypertension, heart disease, and other ailments like that, diabetes. And then the cause of death for white men over 35 is, how can I say this, death. They just got old and they had to die. And so, where do you see the health aspect of our legacy, our wealth going for the Black community? And what do you recommend that can be done about it on an individual level? For the people listening, what can they do in their own families and in their own households?
Well, it's a tried and true statement, but health really is wealth. Health really is wealth, and you can really focus in on a couple of points. One, the longer that you live, the more that your investments and compound interest can support you and be your friend, period. Another point is the more healthy you are, the more that you can control your cost of living. And the more that you can control your cost of living, the more you can put money into investments and have compound interest be your friend. And lastly, health issues, particularly in America, they cause bankruptcy. It causes bankruptcy, meaning that whatever you amassed in whichever period of time can be wiped out in a very short instance because one has not been able to take care of their health. Treat your health like a business. You have to invest in it. And not only when you invest in it, you might have to pay a little bit more right now, but you know that your long-term actions will help pay it off. And so we're not even talking about when you're living and you don't have a good quality of life, right? So there's some people who are living, but their quality of life is terrible. Why? Because their health is not great. Those people are more focused on survival, and they're not focused on expanding their wealth. They're focused on survival. They're not focused on how do I give to my next generation. It really is that simple.
The other thing that I'd like for you to talk about is, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, and we all last year read the stories of this former, I think it was Miss America turned corporate lawyer, turned social media darling, and I forget how she killed herself. But could you talk to me about the importance of even so-called educated people with regard to mental health? That mental health is critical, and I can tell you as a father of 3 kids and with an ex-wife, mental health is critical to doing your jobs and fulfilling your responsibilities. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of mental health in regard to, the foundation of wealth?
Sure. So on the mental health side, it's almost like the silent killer, because it's sometimes hard to actually see when someone's suffering from mental health issues. And we only know it when they unfortunately kill themselves, or I'll call it like a slow suicide, when they put themselves in situations that increase the likelihood of death. So it's something that one has to manage over time. And it's particularly, I want to call it difficult, more unique now, in that you have social media, you have a lot of ways people are out there, and a lot of ways people feeling like they're judged, a lot of ways people feeling uncertain about their own lives because they're looking at other people's lives. And that causes serious issues. And the wild thing is that you're making yourself look as great as possible. So you have to keep up with that image. So having good mental health structure from your very beginning is a great way for long-term for you to make important and strong decisions to support your own health and also support your family as well.
Very good, very good. Matthew, any questions that we have? If anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat box. Mark, you there?
No questions.
Okay. Mark, you there? Did I lose Mark?
Sorry. Yes,
Okay.
my apologies.
Yeah.
Yes, I am here.
So Mark, I mean, you see how we brought it. I mean, you shouldn't even have spoken. You should have just let the two other parties talk about the importance of insurance. They did their job for you. Are they going to get a cut?
Well, let's just say this: nobody gets out alive. Nobody gets out alive. I'm thankful to hear these professionals speaking truth. You know, as an attorney, she may be more impactful for the people she engage. And with a medical background and a JD, you might actually get people to move and take action with their pens. But what I want to help people to understand is that whatever you do in your profession, you need to do something else. Meaning that everyone here has some kind of human capital. We do something, we make money, and that defines an anticipated value over the time. But if you can deploy those assets, you can deploy those assets elsewhere in real estate. You can leverage those assets time and time and time again. And so I don't want this to be solely about insurance. I like to think about insurance as risk management. Hedge your risk. You do it every day.
Yes.
In terms of the health is wealth.
So let me say here. So I got married 20 years ago, and the first thing my then future ex-wife told me was, you know, we're getting married and we're going to have children, so we need to get life insurance on each of us. And I brushed it off, and the life professional, he came to provide it. You might know him. His name is Michael Jones. He did my insurance 20 years ago, and I wasn't available for the appointment, and I came home the next day. There was no dinner in the house, and there was no affection from my ex-wife until I agreed to go to get my blood tested to make sure I didn't have AIDS, so that I could get a life insurance policy. So yeah, I'm glad that I got that out of the way in my early 30s, and so for many years my kids were protected. Beatrice, you there?
I am. I'm right here.
Beatrice, do you come in situations, because a lot of times, you know, we're talking with Mark about insurance and just and I don't want to harp so much on divorce because, you know, but marriage is a positive union. And so I strongly believe that any investment in any real estate, any company is secondary to an investment in a marriage, in a healthy business side of the marriage. So we'll leave the priest and the marriage consultants to talk about how people can communicate and be happy in a marriage. We'll leave that to them. But as a legal professional who practices in this, what type of nuggets that you would give our listeners, our viewers, on as they go about to get married, that they should think of to help them stay married?
I think that different approach works for different people. I don't think that it's the same for everyone, but I think that the list of advice that I probably would give to either newlyweds or people who are trying to make their relationship work, communication is key. And I know that, you always hear about it, is that if two people cannot communicate, then, a marriage or a relationship is not going to work. We have to be able to communicate whatever it is that's going on. Folks need to be able to feel safe with their partner to address, their concerns, their ideas, their issues, etc. I think that, especially when we're talking about Black people, Black couples, I think that especially men, I think you need to be open to, going to counseling, right? Going to sit down with a professional to help you iron out some of the issues that you may be having in your relationship. Because if the two of you could have resolved it, it would have been resolved. If you think that you keep going back in circle, dealing with the same issues, then it may be time for you to sit down with a neutral party, typically, a counselor, a therapist, whatever it is, and, speak to someone about it.
So an investment in, because, that costs money. Therapists cost money. So an investment in a therapist to save your marriage, for many folks, and I can only speak as a man, that would have been a very profitable expenditure, because once divorce happens, it reduces opportunities for wealth accumulation, because your mind is focused on your children, your mind is focused on, well, your ex-wife should know about all these assets, and it just doesn't, it's not conducive to building wealth. Now, you can do it individually without a spouse, but, and so you strongly believe that an investment in a marriage therapist could put you out of business?
I mean,
at least on the divorce side,
divorce is very expensive. So when you're talking about, when you said a therapist, a marriage counselor is expensive, divorce is very expensive. So it depends on, is it a healthy relationship? It is something that's worth saving. You understand? Is your marriage worth saving? There are marriages that are not, they're doomed from the start, or at least somewhere in the middle. Because remember, most often when people come to see a divorce attorney, there's a lot of issues. There's a lot of things going on. This marriage has, basically ended, right, a long time ago before they come and sit and talk to me. There's a small percentage of cases where folks actually, work things out. And there's a way, even when you start the divorce process, if you have a couple that basically says, the marriage didn't work out because this, that, and the other. And then you're like, okay, well, if he or she were to do, these three things, if you guys were to go and see a counselor, do you think that, you can save your marriage? If your client says yes, for me, I think that I have a duty and a responsibility to reach out to opposing counsel and say, talk to your client and see if he's, amicable to staying the process for 90 days. We can ask the judge for an order staying the divorce for 3 months to give these people an opportunity to work on their marriage. Yes, there is a small percentage where this works, but you talk about people going to therapy and you said it's expensive. Divorce is very expensive.
So let me ask you this, because I have I have white friends, and X number of them have been divorced, and male, female, and they will tell you, yeah, we didn't get a divorce, but we live in separate households. It says why? Well, it says because of the health insurance policy, and because of the address for my children's school, or because his law firm partnership, if he gets divorced, it forces a sale, or it forces something, like they realize the marriage didn't work, but they realize that the legal divorce of the marriage would hurt assets that they wanted to protect for their children. Do you ever see that in a lot of Black situations where they may not get divorced even though the marriage is over because economically, as they could afford to get divorced, but just economically, it's in the best interest of the children and the family's wealth that they not go through a legal separation, and they're adults about it. You know, the Rupert Murdoch from News Corp and the New York Post, when he divorced his wife of 30 years and married a woman from China that worked for his company, the first wife, she just got a seat on the board of the company. They didn't force the company to be dissolved. She just took a seat on the board to protect her 3 sons' economic interests. And she refused to let the second wife sit on the board because she's like, yeah, no, that's your playmate. I'm here to protect the family's wealth. And so do you ever see those kind of situations where your Black clients are making decisions that I consider very adult in protecting the wealth of the family, generational wealth?
People stay married for different reasons. Yes, one of it could very well be because of the minor children. They living separate lives. Sometimes they're living in the same house, just different quarters because of the children. Some of them stay married because they cannot afford to, pay rent and pay the mortgage at the same time. That's an asset they don't want to lose, especially if they have minor children. Yes, some of them stay married because if one of the parties have some sort of an illness, and in the state of Florida, and I don't know how it is in other states, once they're divorced, the employer is not going to continue to pay for your former spouse. And so they're going to lose out on the health insurance unless, there's an order that the person continues to pay, and that's going to be, out of pocket. You understand, separate health insurance for that former spouse. So there's many different reasons why people are separated. We have clients that have been separated for years. You understand, years, yet they never, seek to get divorced. And now they're coming to us wanting to get divorced. In the state of Florida, the only problem with that is that when you're separated with someone, but you never got a divorce, if your wife becomes pregnant, then the law in the state of Florida considers you as the legal father of the kid. And so now you are responsible financially to raise another man's baby. So it's up to you.
Oh my God, that is hilarious.
We're talking about generational wealth here. I don't know how it is in other states, but in the state of Florida, right, there is, you are presumed the father. So if you have not been with your wife, say 5 years, and she turned up pregnant, guess what?
Wow, okay, that's deep. That's deep.
That's another way. You have to weigh your options.
So if anybody has any questions, put them in the, any questions, Matthew? Before we're going to be rounding up.
Just a minute.
Okay.
Oh, no, there's not a question. It's just affirmation to what Beatrice was saying. Same thing in Illinois.
Same thing in Illinois? Okay.
Illinois, yeah.
Wow, okay.
So to our viewers, this is going to be posted on YouTube, and I'm going to be hosting every 2 weeks these panel discussions on aspects of protecting generational wealth. Clearly, I'm biased towards investing in commercial real estate. A day doesn't go by that we hear about Black people being pushed out of their communities. And the reality is, I get frustrated when they say it's a Black community. It's not a Black community. It's Black people live on the land, but the community belongs to the people that own the land. And I know in the Northeast and in the state of New York and the city of New York, Black people never own their community. The land is always owned primarily by one other group. And, you know, they're not racist, they're just greedy. And so they're committed to pushing out Black people as soon as they get that opportunity. And so the only way we can prevent that is to learn from these other groups and own the commercial real estate in our communities. That's the only way we can protect ourselves. The second thing is that there so many other groups are getting rich off owning the commercial real estate in Black neighborhoods. It's insane. I don't understand. You know, I talk to lawyers and doctors, and you know, there's a joke that a story that a friend of mine who's Indian, she said that her father's brothers were grew up in India, and they came to America and they graduated from an Ivy League school, medical school, and they became medical doctors, very successful. And in the Indian community, you don't marry the individual, you marry the family. And so her father, who was young and lazy because he was born in America, because, you know, in their view, Americans are lazy, he only had a bachelor's degree and it was only in liberal arts. And he was in his 20s and he wanted to be something they couldn't pronounce. It was entrepreneurship. And so the brothers were pressured to give him $100,000 so that he could waste it investing in entrepreneurship. Anyway, long story short, 5 years later, the brother bought his parents the largest house in the town that they lived in upstate New York, and paid off his other two brothers' medical student loans. Why? Because he invested in Holiday Inn motels and multifamily housing in Black neighborhoods. And so while doctors, you know, love you, high income, 40% of my investor base is medical doctors and lawyers. At the end of the day, that's just earned income. That, you know, the goal should be is to convert your earned income into passive income. And so that the scale, you know, earns, and then as you get older, your earnings is coming down and your passive income is higher and higher, so that you're living on a beach having a margarita and the tenants are paying for your existence. And that is capitalism at its best. And so I'm reaching out to the viewers of this video. Please visit our website at blackrealestateforum.com, blackrealestateforum.com, on learning about the commercial real estate investment opportunities. We'd be happy to share you our investment documents. And our goal is to invest millions and millions of dollars in Black neighborhoods across the country. And we are only accepting money from Black people and Hispanics. We don't have any Hispanic money yet, but we will take their money. But the only way we can do this is if we work together. We have to work together like every other group that comes to America. It's not an accident that they are surpassing the Black community with wealth. And I'm talking about my Asian friends, my Indian friends, my Arab friends. They are surpassing Black people in just every area, from education to home ownership to business formation. You know, in New York, we have one Black bank, and it's located in Harlem, but it's headquartered in Washington, D.C. I think it's Industry Bank. Carver Federal Savings Bank is not a Black bank. It's a Wall Street bank. It's owned by white people. It's not a Black bank. It's run by Black people. You know, same way plantations are run sometimes by, you know, Black people. They do the work, but the wealth goes to white people. But Industry, my understanding is a Black-owned bank. But there are at least 6 or 7 Asian banks in New York. Matter of fact, Matthew, remember when we were going to the Hyatt, the Bryant Hotel on the same block was was an Asian bank, and they had the whole ground floor. And so I'm saying that Black people can have the same opportunity. We spend $1 trillion at least on nonsense commercialism, and we can turn that around. We can convert that spending on handbags and cars and perfume and liquor and vacations, and turn it around and invest it in small businesses and commercial real estate that will build wealth for our people. So I'm going to end it there. I wanted to get my panelists the last comments, and then Matthew, you'll be the last word. Let's go with Beatrice, and then we're going to go with Mark, and then we're going to go with Michael. So Beatrice, you there? Give me 30 seconds before you go.
I am here just as to you have stated, just get your paperwork in order and, get your investment on. And if this group is the best one for you, definitely, I know that Thomas will be contacting you, reaching out to you, and continue to invest. And I think that we can do great things together.
Thank you. And Beatrice is one of our investors. She's one of the lawyers that invested with us. And so we're so happy to have her. Mark, you there?
Yes.
Closing comments.
Well, what you do today will bear fruits tomorrow. And it seems like a cliche statement, but risk management is just a practical way of life. There you go.
Here, here.
Thank you.
Amen. The church says amen. Thank you, the economic pastor of a Black future. Michael, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. How's your son doing?
Oh, he's not crying, so he's doing well.
It's very, very good, very good. Are you sharing in the breastfeeding duties?
No, Thomas, I'm not able to do that. But I do give him a bottle.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, I'm just glad that you are active man in the marriage. So I respect that.
I appreciate that.
So any closing thoughts?
There's little use to accumulating wealth if you don't have the health to enjoy it with your family.
Well said, young man. Well said, young man. Young man, what are you, like 38 now? What are you?
36.
36. Okay, I gave you 2 years. Okay, I'm 54, so I still feel young. I run 2 miles a day. I take your advice. I run 2 miles a day. I eat very healthy. I'm fit, calisthenics, push-ups, curls. I'm trying to keep up with you.
See, there you go. Health as well, man.
And I'm single, so I got to find a girlfriend. So I want her to not kick me to the curb because I can't keep up. So
thank you, Thomas.
Yeah, I told you, you're my role model. When I grow up, I want to be like you. Matthew, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
So Matthew, as a journalist and someone who knows where the economic bodies are buried, take a minute or two to share your thoughts, and then we'll close it out.
Well, all I could say, I just wanted to re-emphasize something you said earlier about generating income. The biggest problem that people are having today is where's my money coming from, and making sure that they keep it. So you can't generate wealth if you don't have any income. One of the biggest problems for our community is where are we generating our wealth? You can't generate it on the streets, at least not enough to actually do what you need to do these days because rents are so high. So people have to adjust their attitude and their strategy for living. Education is important, but for those people that are not interested in college, they have to find some information source that's going to lead them to income. It could be going to the internet and doing some self-teaching. It could be networking and getting in the right community of people who are moving things ahead, such as what we're doing with the real estate fund. It could be skills development. It could be understanding technology better, you can't generate any wealth unless you start with having some information or obtaining some information that's actually going to allow you to be useful to somebody that can pay you. That's the beginning of everything. Then you got to make a decision in terms of whether you want to be employed or whether you want to be an entrepreneur. And unfortunately,
I'm going to let you continue, but I intend to use you as a poster child for, so get prepared for someone who did it right. But go on.
unfortunately, for most people, you're not going to have a choice of one or the other. You're going to have to do both. You're going to have to get some information or get some knowledge, get some experience from an employer, and then step out on your own. This whole thing about people doing side hustles. Well, in most cases, that side hustle is probably going to grow into a side business at some point. Got to treat it as a business. And I think more people need to understand that we need to understand how to run things, how to be in charge of something, so that then you can start the process of creating wealth that's going to continue to grow as you get older. You know, I'm 60 years old, and once you get to be 50 and you're a Black person, it's going to be hard for you to get a corporate job and keep it for the 15 years between 50 and 65. So there's a lot of people that get in that situation. They had a nice salary, and then those cuts come. Look at all of the cuts that are happening now because of the economy kind of going up and down. What do you do when you're 50 and you're out there trying to look for a job? It's not the place you want to be. So you have to start saving and investing in your future in those earlier years when you can maybe jump from job to job a little bit easier. Most people don't understand that. So the whole issue of giving information and educating people ahead of time and earlier in their lives so that they can prepare themselves for later and have that ability to actually create wealth. And I guess the last thing I'll say is one of the things that I did was at some point I found out, oh, well, I really enjoyed having those season tickets to the Knicks, but it was more important for me to have a place to live. So I enjoyed
going with you to some of those games, but go on.
So I traded my season ticket subscription fees into a down payment for a building in Brooklyn. And now I've had a building for almost 20 years now. And, you know, that's been able to allow me to stabilize my income, stabilize the amount of money that I pay on rent, you know, so that I could then use what money I was making in income to do other things like invest in.
Wait, hold on. Don't pass on, because that's what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I know. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
That's why I brought it up. But that's why I wanted to end on, because now I have a place that I can live in.
Right. Okay, I'm going to interview you now. So you bought the property how long ago? About almost 20 years ago?
2004.
Okay, right. So you could have went and spent that money on dating, cars, clothes, being, you know, a baller. Instead, you took that money and you didn't buy you bought a 3-family house?
Yeah. It's a 3-family walk-up.
And you have 2 tenants, right?
One.
And well, no, one is
I had
you have
2 at one time.
No, you have a vacancy. But the other one is a family member. Right. So you're helping to provide economic stability to the family, and that family member is paying you rent, and you're using that rent to service the mortgage debt on the property. There has been significant appreciation from the ownership of that property over the 20-year period. You are going to be liable, or your heirs are going to be liable for significant capital gains on that property, because you bought it when that neighborhood wasn't so cool. You know, people didn't want to, you live in Brooklyn, but people didn't want to live in Harlem. Black professionals, they wanted to go to the suburbs. And then look, a brownstone in Harlem is $4 million 20 years later. And so I'm not going to call out your business, but I know your property, everybody knows it's worth more than $2 million. And so you made wise economic decisions. And I will end by saying, and I'm going to sneak this in before Matthew cuts off, because I don't have the cutoff button on this. Ladies, he's single. He's not married with any children. and he has perfect credit, and he's a successful entrepreneur. So I'll just leave it at that. I want to thank our panelists, Matthew for joining us, for managing things as our communications person. I want to thank Mark. I want to thank Beatrice. I want to thank Michael for you guys joining us. If you want to reach out to them, please visit the chat. The links are up there for their LinkedIn pages, and you can send them emails. We're going to be hosting similar conversations around different topics every 2 weeks. And our goal is to begin to have a national conversation about how Black people can invest and build wealth in our communities on an individual basis. The reality is that we will never catch up to white folks on our own. The government is going to have to take a radical course of action. But for those of us who are in the professional classes, we can do for our family, and we don't really need the government to save us. And so I encourage those that found the content here interesting to reach out to me. Our email is blackrealestateforum.com, blackrealestateforum.com. And I want to thank you for joining us this evening, and please have a great night. Matthew can pause.